The year is 1307 and Switzerland is nothing like we know it today. Back then, it was simply a province under the control of the Austrian royal house of the Habsburgs, who ruled with an iron fist. In this complicated context, we meet Wilhelm Tell, a peasant skilled with the crossbow who is subjected to a terrible punishment. An apple is placed on the head of his son Walter. If Wilhelm hits the shot, he will be freed of charges, but what will happen if he misses? 3 days before these events, Wilhelm was on his farm in the Swiss mountains, doing chores with his son. At that moment, he stopped to look at his shield with the Crusader symbol. It was the last time he raised his crossbow to kill a man, and he intends to stay that way. Unfortunately, fate has other plans for him. Not far away, a group of Austrian soldiers takes refuge in an inn to shelter from the approaching storm. Well, the real storm is there. Shortly after, Conrad Baumgarten, a local farmer, hears a woman screams in the inn. Conrad sneaks into the inn and discovers that the woman screaming is his wife. Governor Wolfschott has killed her. Taking advantage of the governor being distracted in the bathtub, Conrad decides to do what he must. He has exacted his revenge, but now a bunch of soldiers are chasing him. In the storm, the farmer reaches the port and plans to escape immediately in a boat. The locals forbid him from doing so due to the weather conditions, although he prefers to risk the stormy lake rather than face the soldiers. Wilhelm, who is present, can't help but feel sorry for the farmer. After sending his son back home to his mother, Wilhelm gets on the boat with Conrad. If there's anyone capable of navigating these waters, it's him. Meanwhile, Walter hides his best seeking from Wolfschott's soldiers, who take out their frustration on the locals for not finding Conrad. Upon learning of the governor's death, King Albert I of Habsburg, regent of Austria, appoints a new governor for Swiss Gessler, a man who compensates for his youth with excessive brutality. Alongside him, Albert sends his niece Bertha, intending for her to marry her greatest suitor, Gessler himself. She is not thrilled about the idea of marrying a violent man, but her uncle does not want to hear any objections. Having survived the journey, Wilhelm meets his wife Zuna, who tends to Conrad's wounds. Not without complaining, of course. It's not the first time her husband risks everything to help someone in trouble, and it won't be the last. Faced with his wife's annoyance, Wilhelm promises her that he will return home sooner than expected. Changing the scene, we travel to Haddinghausen Castle to meet its owner, a Swiss nobleman of the same name, and his heir, his nephew Rudens. During the characteristic Haddinghausen ritual, Rudens refuses to drink from the cup, which infuriates his uncle. There have been several acts of disobedience, and he is tired of pretending to be noble when, in the eyes of the Austrian authorities, they are merely peasants. If you want to be the next Lord Attinghausen, you need the Habsburgs' approval. It's the only way to succeed, even if your uncle won't admit it. Plus, you have a secret romance with Bertha. Now I see why so many references to the Habsburgs. Returning to Wilhelm, he takes Conrad to Werner and Gertrude Stovaker, a noble couple who hide the fugitive in their castle. Gertrude dreams of a rebellion against the Austrian occupation. That's the line Werner won't cross, as he knew the cost of war fighting in the Crusades with Wilhelm. Their debate is interrupted by an unexpected visitor, Gessler. Forced to improvise, they disguise Conrad as a servant. Having done that, Werner receives Gessler with all honors, but the governor is not fooled and orders his men to search the castle. While they wait, Gessler notices Wilhelm's crossbow and consequently Wilhelm himself. The protagonist has no choice but to keep him entertained until the soldiers announce that the place is clear. However, Gessler approaches the servants and orders them to reveal any information they are hiding. Conrad lowers his gaze out of nervousness, while a drop of blood appears on his hand. At that moment, Wilhelm regains the governor's attention and makes it clear he won't find who he's looking for here. Although Gessler finally withdraws, he orders his men to stay in the area. It's evident the Stoffik are hiding something. Werner, outraged by being intimidated at home, leans towards his wife's rebellion. They must strike back before being completely trampled. Wilhelm, however, is reluctant to join the rebellion. The only thing he offers is to take Werner and Conrad to Fürst of Altendorf, a priest who could act as a spokesperson in the unification of the Swiss people. On the way, they witness the abuse of power by the Austrians and also the bravery of the Swiss. At the insistence of his elderly father, the farmer flees at the appearance of enemy reinforcements and is intercepted by Wilhelm's group. Upon seeing his father being tortured, the farmer asks the protagonist to end his suffering. He complies. In this way, they unleash a skirmish against the Austrian soldiers. Wilhelm and Werner fight side by side, just like in the old days. At the end of the battle, the farmer pays tribute to his father's body. His name is Melchthal, the first rebel recruited for the cause. Upon arriving in Altendorf, they are met by hanged corpses, clear messages from the Austrians to those who dare challenge them. Following the trail of blood, Kessler discovers the massacre at the farm, and to his surprise, most of the dead are his own people. In his anger, he comes across an arrow he recognizes very well. Returning to Wilhelm, he takes his group to Fürst, a local priest who has resisted the Austrian occupation through faith. He claims that most noble houses wish to free themselves from the Habsburgs, although the Sachsen still have doubts. The next day, a delegation sent by Gessler places a pole with a helmet on top in Antildorf. All citizens passing near this pole must bow in respect to the king. While the social uprising is brewing, Wilhelm decides to return home and fulfill the promise made to his wife. However, she notices that he is not really present. His mind is with his rebel comrades, but his heart has yet to decide. Then Zuna offers to fight by his side. After all, that's how they met during the Crusades. On the other hand, Rudens has to endure Kessler's displays of power towards his future wife, Bertha. She finds it hard to hide her displeasure, but she cannot oppose the king's wishes, not while he continues to reign over Switzerland. Therefore, she asks Rudens to be true to his blood and fight for his homeland. That is the path for their love to prosper. In Altendorf, Walter notices the infamous pose. While his friends pay their respects, he stands still. Aware of the danger, Wilhelm prepares to take his son, but the governor's men have already discovered him. When they order him to kneel, Wilhelm flatly refuses. What he didn't expect was the entire town to join his protests. Fürst is doing his job in the midst of the conflict. Kessler personally shows up and orders the protagonist to obey. He agrees to apologize on the condition that he does not kneel. Knowing he would refuse, the governor shows the arrow from the crime scene, asking if he's skilled with the crossbow, as they say. In Wilhelm's silence, Walter can't help but defend him. Consequently, the governor challenges Master Bolstero to shoot an apple right off his son's head. If he succeeds, the charges against him will be dropped. If not, both he and his loved ones will lose their lives, that is if he doesn't kill his own son. Despite the peasants' pleas, including Fürst, Gessler proceeds with the punishment. Then Rudens, tired of the indifference, raises his sword against the governor. Unfortunately, the soldiers quickly subdue and arrest him for treason. The next who step forward is Conrad, admitting that he murdered Wolfschock and offering his life in exchange for Wilhelm's. The governor accepts the deal, but only the part about taking his life, because he still demands that the protagonist take the shot. Tired of the bloodshed, Wilhelm accepts the punishment, not without first assuring his wife that their son will live. Having said this, the crossbowman loads one of his 2 arrows and fires. The uproar erupts among those present. Not even Gessler can hide his surprise. Then, Bertha reminds him that he promised to forgive Wilhelm if he hit the shot. With false courtesy, the governor congratulates the crossbowman but asks about the second arrow he had ready. In exchange for the truth, he promises to spare his life if so. Wilhelm clarifies that if he had killed his son with the first arrow, the second was intended for Gessler. The governor smiles, knowing he has found the perfect excuse to arrest the man who wounded his pride. This unleashes chaos among those present, while Fürst frees Rudens from the guards and asks him to gather an army. A war is looming. Upon returning to Tinhausen, Rudens finds his uncle Begeden ill. On his deathbed, the old man listens to an heir who is remorseful and ready to represent the true values of his house. Following tradition, Rudens takes the cup and prepares his men to end the Austrian occupation. Having done this, he attends a secret meeting between the Stoffaker and the other rebel nobles, convincing them that he is now on their side. Changing the scene, Wilhelm is transported by boat over the same lake where he took Conrad. Coincidentally, that night a storm hits them. Bertha, who was locked in the hole for her rebelliousness, takes advantage of the chaos outside to free herself. But what chaos there is! Since the storm causes the ship to crash against a cliff as it leaves the hole, Bertha takes the keys and frees Wilhelm. Together they challenge the gods. Free from threats, they jump off the ship and head into the forest, where they are approached by allied hunters who inform them that Gessler is on his way to the village of Kushna. Bertha, who knows these lands like the back of her hand, offers to guide Wilhelm to that region. Thanks to her, the protagonist reaches Gessler's caravan. After causing a distraction, he waits for the governor to come out and greet. Since he only hit him in the hand, the crossbowman continues his assault from above, while Gessler uses his own men as a shield. When his position is compromised, Wilhelm escapes with Bertha's help, leaving Gessler more frustrated than ever, especially because he must answer to King Albert, who is unhappy with his management in Switzerland. Besides allowing a rebellion, he has also lost his niece. After tending to Wilhelm's wounds, Bertha separates from him with the intention of dissuading her uncle from supporting Gessler. Wilhelm, for his part, returns to his family and allies at the moment they needed him most. It turns out that during an attack on the Austrian garrison in Altendorf, the rebels were exposed due to a traitor and Gertrude paid with her life. Dejected, Wilhelm offers condolences to a heartbroken Werner. They've been struck, that's clear, but all the more reason to carry on in memory of Gertrude and all their fallen. Meanwhile, Bertha arrives at King Albert's castle and tries to show him another way to govern. Unfortunately, the king ignores her message and prepares his troops to march toward Altender, the epicenter of the rebellion. Additionally, Bertha is arrested for treason and sentenced to death. Her own cousins are sent to execute her, however. One of them ends the life of the other to save her. After this, Bertha surprises Albert in his dreams and ensures that he never wakes up. Meanwhile, Gessler entrenched himself in Altendorf, determined to hold out until reinforcements arrive. Then, a group of rebels led by Wilhelm appears at the town gates with the mission of reasoning with the governor, or at least that's what it seems, because in reality, they keep him distracted. Meanwhile, another group slips into the town through a secret tunnel. At dawn, when the soldiers prepare for the rebels' attack, they discover that the rebels were already inside, disguised as priests. This marks the beginning of the assault on Altendorf. With Wilhelm's forces using their best weapon, the crossbow, the rebels inside the town manage to open the gates. Meanwhile, Rudin's army forces its way through the other entrance. Amidst the chaos, Rudin faces Gessler in a fight with only one winner. Correction, neither will win. At that moment, Werner can shoot Gessler, but helps Walter instead, a decision that costs him his life. With Walter imprisoned along with other civilians, the governor threatens to set them on fire if the rebels do not surrender. Just then, the king's reinforcements appear over the hill, further discouraging the rebels. However, the soldiers soon receive the message that the king is dead, so there is no point in continuing to fight. Gessler watches in horror as his men retreat, while Walter discreetly draws an arrow, the same one his father shot at him. Defeated, the governor boasts that he will be replaced and that Switzerland will continue to remain under Austrian rule. Wilhelm feels satisfied for having killed him, although his son reminds him that they are hunters, not savages. The rebels decide to spare Gessler's life, as this is a punishment worse than death. Days later, while Wilhelm and his family bury their dead, Bertha arrives with an Agnes, the daughter of King Albert, who has assumed the crown of Austria with the goal of avenging the Swiss people. This marks the beginning of a new chapter in the struggle for Switzerland's independence and another challenge for the hero destined to become a legend, William Tell. And so we reach the end of this story. I recommend hitting play on another video or someone will place an apple on your head, and I'm not that good of